in the mid-30s. On Thursday, sunny again with highs in the low 60s. It's 42 degrees right now in Charlotte.
This is Charlotte Talks. I'm Mike Collins. Once a month, Mayor Vi Lyles joins us on the program, and today's the day we talk about City Council taking up discussions again on the length of their terms and on that of the mayor. They are considering extending terms from 2 to 4 years. Council's also talking about using technology to slow us down. Indeed, there is an app for that. And we will also touch on the Hidden Valley redistricting pause, rezoning in Ballantyne, and more. Mayor, welcome back. Good to see you. Good morning.
Morning, Mike, and good morning to everyone listening.
City Council, as I just said, is about to delve into a topic that they've talked about before, changing the length of terms served by members and by the mayor from 2 to 4 years. I think this first became a topic in, I don't know, the 1980s. Why is this recycling? Why is it coming around again now?
I think it has the recycling of this topic is because we have changed. Our city is growing. We're almost 900,000 people. Governance requires a lot of more effort, a lot more engagement and communication. All of those things that are important. And I think that the council is looking at ways that we can have good governance or governance that's really good to match the requirements of a growing, fast-growing community and city. And so this has been a discussion, I think, in the past. It's also been around the idea of how do we get people that can actually take a project from the beginning until the end. Most governmental projects and actions, like our capital investment program and even our social programs and residential kinds of initiatives, really require more than 1 year to do. So often the policy is adopted, is tweaked, is tested, but some of the results are longer term. And I think several of the council members see that and want to see it through.
This topic came up, I think the last time was 2019, at which time it was found to be wildly or widely unpopular among voters. In fact, when the county commission floated a similar idea for their seats, voters shot it down by a 2-to-1 margin. Do you understand why? And if the council has changed, have voters changed?
Well, I think the real test of this is that we had a citizens committee that was chaired by Amy Peacock, that was a bipartisan committee, and we asked them to look at our governance structure for what we need to be, not just today, but in the future. And they recommended and suggested that we look at 4-year terms. They made a number of recommendations, and the council made a decision to take 2 forward, one of those being the 4-year term. So I believe that we have the opportunity to educate the public, to engage with them on this 4-year term and and allow them to give us input. I think the ultimate input is a referendum. And I've said in our community, our norms for this community is for them to make the voters to make the decision, but the council can legally make this decision on their own. The question is, how will they discuss this? How do they decide the engagement is sufficient enough that they would either believe that the citizens want to do it or whether they go straight to a referendum? The real plus of this is that even if the council makes the decision to go forward with a petition of 5,000 voters verified, that then triggers a referendum no matter what. So I think the council is going to have a robust discussion around it. And I believe that not only is it 4-year terms, but my recommendation in the past and continues to be that staggered terms would really help us carry longevity and recommendations through the process of the goal that we would have to have continuity as we govern in this community.
So all of you, the mayor and the council members are operating on an extra year as it is because the election was delayed. We have another election coming up. Do you plan or hope to have the question of whether you're running for 2 or 4-year terms decided before then, or would you wait and put the referendum on the ballot along with you and you would serve your 2-year terms? And if voters say yes, you would come back 2 years from now and run for 4-year terms? How would it work?
I think that's farther than my crystal ball will take me, Mike. I am not sure what the council committee will discuss. It was clear that they wanted the discussion to begin earlier than later, but I think all of those have to be laid out as options and people have to weigh in on them. As I said, this isn't a simple decision. It might seem that way, go from 2 years to 4 years, but the voters, the communities, their interest groups around this, I mean, imagine what the political parties were thinking about and how they would deal with this. How would candidates that currently serve or wish to serve, what commitment are they willing to make? Maybe some people really want to serve 4 years. Others may say 2 years is enough of public service. And I don't know the answer to what the schedule would be, but I expect that Mr. Driggs is chairing the committee on effective governance, and he's going to have an opportunity to lay this out. And the good thing is all of these meetings are available online, live as well. You can come back and view them later. I hope that they'll begin really quickly to talk about it in the concept of engagement and education for the community step by step.
And is the argument in favor of 4-year terms, the fact that with 2-year terms, particularly if you are a new member, you're just getting your feet wet and your term of service is up unless you are reelected. And what was the other point I was going to make? I can't remember now, but is the point then that it gives you more time to study and understand the challenges that City Council faces?
You know, Mike, that's a really good question for me, because I do believe that when you just watch council meetings on TV or on a video, or you just read about it in the paper, some people may choose to serve or offer their service without a real firm foundation of what we're doing. Now, in the past, what we've tried to do is have these workshops for candidates to come in and say, this is how the city operates, explain the differences between what the state does, the county does, the city does, the school board does. It is complex. And I would hope, though, that when you offer the opportunity to serve and you're elected, that you come in with more than just a minimal understanding of what governance means for the city. And I've asked our team here, our administrative team, to try to figure out how to talk about that earlier than later, even in this election coming up with filing in February.
There's also discussion, as I understand it, on council about adding an additional council seat. I guess that because of the growth of the city, some on council believe an additional district is needed. Where does that stand? When would that be decided? And would it be something that you would add a seat for this upcoming election?
Well, that is the charge to the committee, just along with the 4-year terms, because this discussion has been, our districts are larger than all of the remaining city towns in our county. A district is 125,000 people now. And the question has been, has that representation been sufficient to represent all of those areas? You know, I have a personal philosophy on this. My personal philosophy is that you're elected in a district to bring those ideas, the concepts, the things that people really are invested in solving or changing by district. But I believe every council member has a responsibility to look at the decision-making for the good of the whole. So that's my personal philosophy about it. But I think that there are other ways to look at it. I've heard council members say, well, this is my district. This is the way I'm going to vote because of my constituency in that district. And oftentimes, especially around our growth issues, we see this occurring. If the district says, well, this isn't, the neighborhoods or the community in the district say that this isn't something that we want, then generally there's been some kind of like weighted scale that allows that to have more influence. Is that the right way to do it? How do you make these decisions? And I think that's what the effective governance committee will have to debate. What is the role of districts and how does that work? And that would play into whether or not there's an additional district. But I think we have to define that first.
You have less than 3 months to make this decision. The primary is May 1st. I think it is, unless it gets changed because of redistricting at the Supreme Court level, I suppose. But can you make that decision by then and give a candidate, if you decide to add a district, enough time to think about the filing and then running?
Well, again, the council would like to have this, they've asked the committee to do this work so that this council would be able to make that decision. Now, I don't know if that's possible or feasible. I don't know what the public thinks about it, because I think that when we had this discussion on Monday, it was what we call our strategy session, where the council members really exchanged great ideas, great conversation, able to critique and question things. I think that a lot of this will have to take place. Our committees are stronger and more focused now, and I believe that that conversation will have to take place with that committee, and they'll be coming back in the next several weeks to give council an update of what they're doing. So by, to February, March, they'll come back and say, here's where we think we can be. It'll be a little bit more clear then.
I would also think that you have to figure out where that district is going to gather people from. There's going to be some carve-outs here. Any idea of what that committee is thinking about, where they might put that district, or who will lose people, or where people will move, et cetera?
I have not heard council talk about that, but I expect that the political pundits and political party leadership, if this moves forward, they're probably thinking about some methodologies. I would expect that we're not unique in making changes like this, and there may be some conversations about where has this been done, how did they do it. I would hope that that would be part of the analysis on it. I don't know how we would do that. The last time that we had a major change in the structure of our government was probably the mid-70s. And that was when Ron Leeper led a petition and it was generated by the community, to have district representation and to have an at-large format. I think asking the community that question of whether or not they believe that change is necessary is going to be an important one, and how that change would be implemented ought to be a part of that, so that the community, the residents, the voters of this city would know what they're actually addressing. So if you say, do you want more district representation? That's great. But do you want more district representation that describes how, and describing how that would be chosen is something that would be better responded to by the voters.
Let's shift gears here and talk about speed. We live in a city of speed bumps and four-way stop signs, and now the focus is turning to technology to slow us all down. City Council and CMPD are interested in using technology, including a smart app. How would this, explain this? How would this work?
Okay, now you're talking to someone that may not have used or tried the app before, but the conversation that I heard from the council members is that how do you use a digital program to help with distracted driving? How do you use an app on your phone? And my understanding is that this app is actually something that's being tested by our transportation folks at some locations, and that there's some opportunity to ask that question and examine what it means. I think that in the issue of safe driving in our city, distracted driving in our city, speeding in our city, we ought to try every tool that's in our toolbox. And several of those tools came up with the during the council's discussion, including red light cameras, speeding cameras, all of that. So I'm hopeful that technology does help us do better on safety.
We're going to get into that technology, like it or not. We're going to talk about this app and how it works, and how much it's going to cost, and all that good stuff when we come back with Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles on WFAE. Support for Charlotte Talks comes from WFAE members and the Original Mattress Factory. Hand-built mattresses and box springs in Charlotte and sold directly to the customer at showrooms throughout the region. More information at originalmattress.com. Nearly 2 years ago, in March of 2020, COVID-19 was officially deemed a pandemic. Now, at the time, some scientists predicted that our only way out was get to a time when the disease was endemic, essentially when it was no longer disruptive, but it was out there everywhere. And that was before vaccines promised to control it. Unfortunately, not everyone got the shot, but now we actually may be entering that endemic state. And we will talk about what that might look like tomorrow at 9.
On the latest FAQ City, where can you find the biggest, oldest trees in Charlotte?
Oh my God, you're not going to believe this. We found it. Can you believe that? Oh my God.
Listen to the FAQ City podcast on WFAE.org/FAQ City or wherever you get podcasts.
It's Charlotte Talks on listener funded 90.7 WFAE and 90.3 WFHE. I'm Mike Collins. We're here with Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles. She's with us about once a month. We're talking right now about speed and slowing us down and identifying speed traffic corridors. Most importantly, technology. There's an app. CMPD has identified at least 2 speed corridors. I guess these are places where people habitually go over the speed limit, and they would be parts of Independence Boulevard between Morningside Drive and Idlewild Road, also along with the plaza from Eastway Drive to Milton Road. How did we find these 2 corridors to be the speeding epicenters of Charlotte?
Well, those of us that have lived here for a while that contribute to that problem probably weren't surprised by those 2 areas that are identified. And this is where we go, Mike, when we talk about how Charlotte was built for cars versus people or other modes of transportation. Both of these areas are major thoroughfares. I recall when there were houses right behind the restaurant that always says the vegetables are always fresh. We tore that down to widen that section from Wendover to Independence Boulevard so that the area down Eastway just became 4 lanes, fast traffic. Independence, the same thing. Independence is really, I think, listed as a freeway all the way through. But in terms of, if you'll recall, when we opened the section of Independence close to the Brookshire, remember the speed limit was 50 and cars were going so fast that we just upped the speed limit. So we built roads to help people move around. But now the thinking is different. How do we build roads so that they're safe for everyone and fast moving cars are not? So it doesn't surprise me, the Plaza and Independence and Milton Road, all of those are identified. And I think that we probably identify more if we actually had some ideas of what we are going to do about this. And I think that's the real key.
How fast are these people going? How fast? Because Larkin Eggleston, a councilman, says that there are people driving irresponsibly, and they are not only putting themselves at risk, but the lives of others at risk. How fast are we talking about here?
Well, the speed limit, I believe, is 40 to 45, and I would expect most people drive 10 miles over, but I'm not going to state what it is because I don't have the data. Let's just say, how fast do you drive on Independence?
Much faster than that.
Okay. I think that we're typical people that drive faster.
Because it's a limited access freeway at that point.
Yes.
It's essentially interstate, as you said. So there's this app that I do want to explore a little bit with you. That it's called a Travel Safely app. It's already being used, I think, in Cary. Charlotte has launched this $100,000 pilot program, I guess, to test the app. Is that correct?
That's correct. It is being done in Cary, and we are testing it.
Since you are claiming to be app insufficiently informed on the app, let me tell you what I read about the app, and you can confirm or deny. You download this app onto your phone, and at a red light, it will then display a countdown and verbally notify you when the light is about to turn green. This makes it a drag race. If you're speeding toward a red light, the app will alert you that you're approaching that red light too fast. It will notify you if you're traveling too fast in a school zone or a work zone. It will warn you if you're going into a turn at too high a rate of speed, and it will warn you if a cyclist is ahead of you on the road, or a pedestrian, or an emergency vehicle. And there's much more that this app allegedly will do. So first of all, how does it know all of this app? And do you really think people will turn down their radios or stop listening to their podcast and pay more attention to this app? It sounds incredibly distracting.
Well, that was one of the points that the council members made. Is the app more distracting? Are we making the problem worse instead of better because of the way that the app operates? I don't believe that Carrie or Charlotte would not. I believe that we would attempt to make sure that whatever app we have would be workable. And that's what pilots and testing is about. I mean, to be able to see if it works. So I think we need to, give it a moment and let it go through the test. I also, Mike, when we talk about things like this and we see change coming, but I compare this no different. I travel sometimes over on Selwyn Avenue, and we had the flashing signs that said, slow down, here's your speed limit. And it did make me pause, because as I travel that, I see where I might be going 38 and it's a 35, or I might be going 40 and it's a 38. Apps and those signs aren't any more distracting. So I look, it's just change, and it's how we do this. I don't know, in some cars, the availability of a smart screen to be able to respond to this kind of app may be helpful. It doesn't necessarily, it's change that's coming in our technology, and what we're doing is trying to test it to see if it works. And if it works in Charlotte or Cary, maybe it's something that we'll see more investment in across the country, but I know that we've got to do something differently.
So this is happening in other cities, as we just said, but the pilot program is being aimed at South End. We've identified these two other speed corridors, but they're putting the pilot program at South End. Why not in the speed corridors?
Well, I think that's a really good question, because South Boulevard is a state street, and it doesn't have the crosswalks and the pedestrian protections that we need in South End now. South End is a neighborhood now. It is not just a corridor to get from, Ballantyne into the center city for work. And so I think that the reason that we chose South End, and I would hope that we get some verification from our team, is because we've had pedestrian fatalities in South End. We know that the neighborhood is changing, and it's part of what we're doing in terms of growth. So I think it's an appropriate place. I hope that I'm close as our transportation team is listening, or anyone is listening on this. If they want to chat, then they can send us the reasons that are perhaps distributed or reformed. But in my opinion, it's because of the changing way that we have to treat people as we grow, especially as we grow differently.
So if this app is going to time traffic lights for you, clearly there must be some sort of communication link between the app on your phone in your personal car and those around you and the traffic lights. So what kind of infrastructure has to be added to what we already have to allow that communication to go back and forth? And how much is that going to cost? And where's that $100,000 coming from?
That is something we're going to have to come back and give you some more information on. All I can say is that I drive a car that when I get within a certain distance of the car in front of me, the beeping scares me that my car makes. And I know that that's camera technology. And I know that I can see the other car's rear, but I know that that sound happens. I would expect that that technology is pretty much available in a lot of different formats and ways. But again, let me get back in my lane and say that we'll have to have some technology people explain that to us.
Okay, well, maybe there's a 30-minute segment on that in our future on this program. We'll find
That's
out.
A great idea. We can always get the team to come in and talk about it.
Let's talk about some controversy that has arisen in the last week or so surrounding the person hired to oversee the mayor's racial equity initiative, a state audit in Ohio of that state's Department of Job and Family Services, an organization formerly led by Kim Henderson, reveals that the agency paid out $3.8 billion in fraudulent and inflated unemployment claims that cost Ohio taxpayers about $400 million. And last May, the Ohio Attorney General asked police to launch a criminal investigation into Henderson and her staff to see if they violated any statutes, including dereliction of duty, obstruction of official business, and falsification. This all sounds pretty serious. And the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance hired her and said they factored all of that information into their decision to proceed with her hiring. Do we know what the result of the investigation in Ohio was?
Mike, I've been pretty clear that let me give you 3 points. One, the Alliance made the decision to recruit and hire a position that would deal with employment racial equity. In that decision, they did not request, nor did I interview, help hire in anything about this position. No city council member was involved in it. And we have myself as a part of this private equity or racial equity program. And Mr. Bakari serves on our advisory board for the Alliance and their board of trustees. And none of us had anything to do with this. And I also want to make the point that there is no city money involved in this. This money around this commitment to the Racial Equity Fund, the city does have a lane, and we are working through our corridors, our digital divide, and those areas. But the money that the Alliance is working with, and particularly the focus of the Alliance, one of their major initiatives is to do reporting on corporate diversity hires and where are we seeing the opportunity for African American and other people of color to proceed to success in these businesses. And that was one of the things that they committed to do. And that's appropriate because they're a business membership organization. They work with the private sector on a regular basis in terms of how they're organized and what they do. And what I believe is that this idea of the employment of someone to help look at racial equity is still a good thing. I know that sometimes we're focused on one thing, but let's not forget the whole intent of this was to have the private sector look at the equity framework that we have in commerce in this city. So as we grow, that we are doing something about the racial inequities in the past. The city council has a committee chaired by Dimple Ajmira, Renee Johnson, and Braxton Winston. They're doing the very same thing for us. They're creating a framework for governance in our city on racial equity. The Alliance can do that for businesses. We can't do that for businesses. And so I have the confidence that the Alliance membership and leadership, they're making this decision. And while I understand, I have to say that this has really been something that I look at, and here we have the focus on one thing, this hire. And I think that the real question is, what are the results? And then both cases, how do we look at this hire? It's not something that is external. It's something that really ought to be internal to the Alliance and the business community that have raised this money.
I might respectfully disagree with you, Mayor.
I am sure you will.
I think the key question here is the question that I asked that you didn't answer, and that is, what is the outcome of the investigation in Ohio?
Well, we won't know that. I won't know that. My understanding is
why don't we know that? Why would you hire somebody who's under a criminal investigation if you don't know the outcome? She may be completely innocent, but we don't know that, right?
Well, let me put it this way. I am not responsible. If this were inside our internal organization, I would expect that we have protocols, but I am not sure what the protocols were inside. So why don't you know it is not a question for me, it is a question for the Alliance. And I think you ought to ask them that. If that is the question, ask them.
And then also let's clarify something else, because some of the things that I've read said there are city funds going into this mayor's initiative. You're saying that there are no city funds, therefore no taxpayer dollars going into this initiative.
I am saying exactly that, because let me tell you how this has worked. You remember the controversy over this. You know, there were many discussions about it. The city has the responsibilities for the corridors of opportunity. That's the funding that we have set aside, $72 million to help our corridors. Now, in my belief, it's best that we work with the private sector to encourage minority businesses to have banking relationships and to have the ability to get grants and loans. But that money, the council has to make that decision. And we have been talking about this funding since our retreat earlier this year. And I think that there's probably a little bit of merit in this discussion being more political than it is effective.
It's called the Mayor's Racial Equity Initiative. Given the mystery surrounding this woman who's been hired to run this thing and the outcome of the situation in Ohio, do you really want your title and your name attached to this until they discover what's going on here?
I've had a number of people call me and say, well, you ought to change the name. You ought not have your name associated with this. You know, I'm just kind of maybe a traditional stand-up person. I don't know the outcome. I don't know this woman's history. I don't know what the result will be, but I have a lot of trust in this community. I trust the leadership of the Alliance. I trust the people that come here, and I trust that the intent and purpose of this is so well needed and necessary. Now, not everybody's going to agree with that, but maybe I'm just a traditionalist. When we talked about why was it named the Mayor's Racial Equity Initiative, it wasn't about me. It was about a continuing conversation between the private sector and the government section. And, you know, ever since I've been in office, I've championed and really believed that our public-private partnerships with our philanthropy, business community, and government, they have paved the way to our success. And I'm never going to back off of that. And you can call it whatever. And I've got numbers of suggestions from people saying this is what you ought to do. And at the same time, if you look behind a name, what are we trying to do? We are trying to make sure that the mayor, no matter who that mayor will be, will always have the ability to work with the business community and philanthropy to say racial equity needs to be resolved. And we have to have somebody to champion that for our community. I believe the mayor's role is to champion our city and our community, and that's what I'm going to do.
So you mentioned just a second ago that City Council is involved in an oversight position in some way, because you mentioned Tariq Bakari, Councilman Tariq Bakari, being on that committee that deals with this initiative with the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. Is that
No,
correct?
That's not what I said, Mike. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I mentioned that he is on the Alliance current Board of Trustees. That's the current operation
right.
beyond what it is with the initiative.
Then that allows me to ask this question. Tariq Bakari tweeted this. What did the mayor know, and when did she know it? I sure hope the media will be making public records requests, because this is either more lies, see council retreat, a ARPA deceit, or incompetence. If he's on the committee, on the board of directors of the organization who's hiring this woman who's under investigation, why is he dragging you through the mud?
Well, you'll have to ask him that question. I can't imagine what goes on when my competence is questioned. I can't imagine the idea of being called a liar. And so this is just kind of one of those things that if I pay attention to the people that criticize me, then I'm not going to be able to move forward. And I'm not looking in the back and saying, well, what is everything?
We have to stop,
that.
Mayor. We'll come back and discuss that a little more on the other side. Support for Charlotte Talks comes from WFAE. Represent Bodyworks Plus, a luxury car collision center since 1998, dedicated to family safety and factory car repair standards. More details and appointments at bodyworksplus.com. Coming up in 20 minutes, 10 o'clock. For millions right now, something is going on with the rent. A booming housing market is forcing many out of their homes. As Rents in some cities, including ours, spike by as much as 40%. On the next 1A, coming up in 20 minutes, Jen White investigates why. And you'll hear why hedge fund managers are making it harder than ever to find an affordable rental. Now, the mayor will be listening. We will too in 20 minutes at 10 o'clock on 1A. And we will continue our conversation with Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles coming up just moments from now. Stay with us.
Black Profiles is presented by listener-funded public radio 90.7 WFAE. In 1968, Dr. Bertha Maxwell Roddy became the first Black principal at a white Charlotte-Mecklenburg school. She also started and chaired the Black Studies Department at UNC Charlotte. As a visionary, she co-founded the African American Cultural Center, now the Harvey B. Gantt Center. Dr. Roddy served as the 20th National President of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, and a scholarship is offered in her name.
It's Charlotte Talks on WFAE and WFHE. I'm Mike Collins. We're talking with Mayor Vi Lyles today. And before we went to the break, we were talking about the little controversy, well, I don't know how little it is, that's going on with the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. For those of you just joining us, they hired a woman out of Ohio to run the Mayor's Racial Equity Initiative. And evidently, as far as we know, she is currently under investigation. She and her staff at the Ohio State Department of Job and Family Services, because the agency paid out $3.8 billion in fraudulent and inflated unemployment claims, and they want to know if there's any criminal intent in that. And we don't know the outcome of that. At least the mayor does not know, and I have not been able to find out the outcome of that. And yet the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance hired her to run this organization. And now there's this tweet from Republican City Councilman Tariq Bakari saying, what did the mayor know and when did she know it? And the mayor has said this morning that she knows nothing. She did not participate in this. Neither did City Council participate in the selection or the interview process. Is that all correct for the hiring of this woman? Because this is run by the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. All of that is correct, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So is this just Tariq Bakari playing politics, running for mayor, putting out mis and disinformation like the rest of the Republican Party?
I can't address what Mr. Bakari is thinking or doing, and I certainly don't go to the Republican Party strategy sessions. I would say this, Mr. Bakari and I have a relationship that sometimes can waver from and beyond governance. And I think in this case, the idea of him saying incompetence or that lying is involved is a statement about what he believes about me. But that's not what I believe about myself. I believe that I have a history in the city of always acknowledging when I've made a mistake and I'm willing to own it. And I think that's one of the most important things that you can do when you serve the people in this community. Because if I got everything right, I'd probably be working someplace else. But I don't get everything right, but I'm willing to own it. And I don't try to make up other theories, and I don't question motives of other people. I think you have to ask them that. I know my motive.
There's something rotten here in the state of Denmark. I mean, somebody's responsible for this. And if you're telling me that the mayor and the city council had no role to play in this, never spoke to this woman, never interviewed this woman, never looked at her resume, did not make the hiring decision, but it was made by the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, of which Tariq Bakari is a member of the board of directors. Isn't that where the fault lies?
I don't see this as fault, Mike. I don't know what
he's throwing aspersions at you, Mayor. If they're not true, then the truth lies in the opposite direction.
I think that there have been a lot of dispersions cast. I don't cast dispersions. I have said consistently, I did not hire or interview or participate in the process for this hire. I want to make sure, Mike, that you said you have not met this woman. I have met this woman. She was at the Alliance retreat that I attended to talk about mobility. She was in the room and in the space. I think at that point, I don't think she was hired, but I did meet her. Mr. Bakari was not in the room at that time. He didn't come to the retreat the Alliance held, but that Alliance meeting had, I would say, over 40, 50 people there. There were lots of really great content. They talked about their strategy moving forward. But I don't want anybody to say that I've not met this woman, because I did meet her at that retreat. And so I want to be clear, because I don't want it to be any nuance because someone would say, well, you met that woman, and Mike Collins said that, you haven't met her. And I think that was in an alliteration, as they call it, as you were just saying, here are some of the things about her. But I'm quite comfortable with my comments being what they are, my willingness to say and speak for myself and not for others.
Okay, moving on. Two community activists, Charlotte Henderson and Cedric Dean, filed a lawsuit last year disagreeing with the decision to move the predominantly Black Hidden Valley neighborhood from District 4 to District 1 as a part of the overall redistricting process that's going on because of the 2020 census. Attorneys for the city have asked for the suit to be dismissed, arguing that it failed to show, the plaintiffs failed to show how this new district violated the law, but the judge has opted to give the two plaintiffs 30 days to revise their arguments. And I believe they were representing themselves. So now they're going to go out and hire an attorney. Did the decision to delay the final decision on the case surprise you?
I think that the city has a strong case. I think that our lawyers have looked at this. I think our processes were clear. And I believe that ultimately the judge is going to have a ruling that includes the ability for the people that are filing this action to have adequate representation and to present their strong case. And I believe that's what's important. I think that's what this judge was really saying, is that here you're sitting and you've got the city attorneys, representatives, and you've got a community group that's trying to say, how do we look and appeal what we think is a wrong? And I think the judge is making sure that they do have that ability. Now, he said, I don't know if they actually have a representation yet, but I completely understand that if I were judging something like this, you want everybody to be able to put forth their very best argument. And I think that's what the judge was trying to do. Now, do I think that the city's argument is strong? Yes. And I hope that we prevail, but I also hope that they feel that they actually had a really good shot at making sure that they had every part of their concerns addressed in this case.
The 1 cent sales tax for transit is up for discussion again. City leaders, including yourself, have called for investments in the city's transit system. There's some question about how this might go or how it might go to voters. And when you were asked recently about the status of the tax, you said, let me use the word negotiation. What did that mean?
That means that there are so many decision-making opportunities when you talk about the sales tax. If the city is not the single decision maker in this, it's obvious that we have the way that North Carolina works is that while we have to ask permission for a referendum like this, and we have to go to the state to do that. So that's one of the very first things. I think that people also forget that we also have to ask the county commission to put it on the ballot. We have to have agreements. But then when I said negotiation, it's because to be able to get to the state, you have to come with people that are helping you get to that point. Charlotte has always had, I think, a good relationship with our delegation. But we also are not like the rest of the state. Our delegation has one Republican in it. And when you look at the state is basically Republican led. So we have to continue to work with everyone, particularly the leadership and our delegation around the Republican Party and the Republican legislature. And then there's the governor's office, there are the towns, all of this. So that's why I say negotiation. That's the word.
We can't even put this on a referendum on the ballot unless the legislature says we
Correct.
can. And the poll last spring indicated narrow support for this among voters. Leaders have been making a case for this transit system and transit system improvements. And we even have a plan that lays out everything from now to eternity on the light rail and buses, et cetera. And we've been talking about it ad nauseum. Why is support so anemic?
I think that many people in our community, while we agree with certain portions of what we're trying to accomplish, we don't completely agree with the total package. And the initiative that's required for this means that you have to have everyone come to the table and say, I can live with what's there. And that takes a lot of work. And it's finding out first what people want, what can we agree to, how do we come to a consensus, and then how do we move forward to go and make a request of the state legislature? How do we ask them to allow our voters to make this decision is a key point. And if they don't see the benefit of what this is for Charlotte, then they have the ability to say, well, why should we do this? And I think that it just takes time. And you say ad nauseum, the planning is ad nauseum, but the planning for funding has just been really amped up in the last 18 to 20 months. And this is what we have to do. We've all known the need that we have infrastructure problems in this county. In this region, we have this infrastructure problem. So now what we have to figure out is how to deal with that infrastructure. But you can talk about plans and efforts and technology and what projects might be done. But until you get some money, all of that just sits until we have a way to fund it. And
you've also said that this is a quote, we've just got to get the message out there and get people to understand that if we provide efficient, clean, and safe transportation modes as an option, I think we can see that we will get someplace on funding of this plan. And you've been talking about this for years. The CEO of CATS has been talking about this for years. Other members of the community, leaders in the community, including the people who put together the transit plan, have been talking about this for years. What will it take to get the message out there, quote unquote, if it hasn't gotten through yet?
Well, you have to remember 30% of Charlotte's population turns over every some number of years. And so it's a continuous education, but now we're working with the people that are in decision-making authority to make sure that they understand it, because those are sometimes our best communicators to what is, a city of 900,000, a county of over 1 million, and as well regionally. Mike, sometimes I'm grateful for the small things. When we created, or when Pat McCrory was mayor, and we passed the first quarter-cent sales tax, and we had that, Pat created with the other towns that the 7 mayors and the county commission would be the decision-making body. In the time that I have served as mayor, we now have not just the 7 people in the county. We have the mayor of Gastonia, the mayor of Concord, the Economic Development Council for Gaston County. All of us are participating in that. You may say, well, so we're just continuing to talk. But widening that circle, having the COG or the Carolina Central Line Council of Governments have a Connect Beyond plan, we are widening this discussion and bringing more people into it to build a foundation that will someday, I hope, pay off.
Timing plays a role in almost everything. And Vice President Kamala Harris was here recently, along with the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, to talk up the infrastructure package that was just passed in Congress and signed by the president. Are any of those funds earmarked for Charlotte? And if so, how much? Will it be enough? And whatever money we might get, will that be predicated on our matching it?
So this is a little bit more complex. It's a great question, and I'm going to try to say this. We have asked, originally the formulas required the local money, state money, and federal money. I do not believe that we'll get state money, so that means we have to find that money at the federal level. And so our hope is that when the final decisions and criteria are set for the federal infrastructure money, that they recognize that this money is a local decision-making tool. My concern is that other cities, and I've said this as well, Texas and North Carolina are kind of the leading efforts in this idea of how do we grow our communities in a way that we maintain our quality of life, and infrastructure being one of it. Austin, Houston, and Dallas are already funded from their local share. We are not. So how do we make sure that there's federal funding for us in this package? And we're going to work through that with the Secretary of Transportation, with our congressional delegation, with our senators. And I think that they will support the federal funding that we can get for infrastructure that provides for transportation and mobility.
You want movement on this. I know you've said that you want this to proceed on. Is your hope that we can get this on a ballot in November as a referendum, or do you think that's an impossible task given all the negotiating that you have to do here and at the state level, et cetera?
I would say that the goal overall is to get it done. When it gets done, as long is a question. So if we get to a place, and candidly, if we get to a place that we feel like this isn't going to be the route to take, what will we do? And that pushes us back a little bit, but we have to say, if we get the referendum on the sales tax, and I think there's a valid reason for that, and I think that it actually is better for the entire region to participate in funding instead of just Charlotte. But I think that several of the council members, including the mayor pro tem, have said, if that doesn't happen, we still have a problem in Charlotte. And Charlotte has only one way to fund things, and it's property tax.
And I have 30 seconds left. If we don't get state money, and I believe you said you didn't think we will get any state money, can we afford this?
Yes, we can afford it. It may be a long-term program. It may take us some time to get financing and get projects done. But the question that I have for you is, what happens if we do nothing?
And that's been raised many, many times by many, many people, and nobody in Raleigh is listening or cares, I think. Well, that's a topic for another day. Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles, thank you for the hour.
Thank you very much, Mike, and goodbye. Have a great day, listeners.
Charlotte Talks with Mike Collins is a production of 90.7 WFAE. Support for Charlotte